Are we like ready? Because JJ has a hard 45 minutes out.
Sound speed, we're good.
It's probably going to dent a little bit, but who cares?
It's like poking out above the brain. It's like indented right there.
Yeah, I see, like here and here.
Exactly.
We're recording.
Oh, well, I made the pod. I'm trying to help you.
You haven't put me on your pod yet.
Yeah, like that. That's perfect.
All right, we good, Jayson? Welcome to Mind the Game with LeBron James and JJ Redick, brought to you by Uninterrupted and 342 Productions. This is episode 8. We discuss everything about the conference finals. In particular, we talk about the identity of these 4 teams, the importance of role players in the NBA playoffs. We have a discussion on Caitlyn Clark. We have a discussion on Bronny James. There is a few technical things we talk about in this episode. A lot of this stuff we have discussed before, so you can always reference previous intros and previous episodes for any of the lexicon that we may discuss in this episode. There's a few things I want to just break down real quick. This will be quick, I promise you. And this is just pick and roll coverages. This is more of a refresher than anything. Ball handler here, defender here, screener here, defender here. All right. Drop coverage, okay? Drop coverage. This defender right here is going to sit back sometimes in the paint and play drop coverage, which just means he's dropping towards the basket. Very simple, drop coverage. I always say this about definitions of basketball concepts. A lot of times, it's just simply in the word. So up to touch is another coverage. Up to touch means the defender is up to touch as the ball handler comes off. This is different than a blitz, which is more aggressive. There's also a soft blitz, which is interchangeable with up to touch. The other concept we talk about a bunch actually is hedges. A lot of NBA teams don't do this anymore, but if you are target hunting, if you are trying to create a mismatch and get a switch, a lot of teams will do this. We saw this a ton in the Indiana-New York series where this offensive player with the ball is Jalen Brunson, so I'm going to circle him. This offensive player could be Josh Hart, could be Miles McBride. They're being guarded by Tyrese Haliburton right here, okay? That is the defender. A hedge, this screener is being set. Jalen Brunson's coming off. Tyrese Haliburton is actually going to get higher than the level of the ball, and he's going to try to reroute Jalen Brunson around him. And what that does is, if Tyrese Haliburton is here and Jalen Brunson goes around, this screen is being set. Here we go. Jalen Brunson's defender, in this case, Aaron Nesmith, let's say, he can get back in front of the ball. What we talk about in this episode is sort of opportunities for the screener against a hedge to roll or slip into space. So again, as this guy's coming off and Tyrese Haliburton or whoever hedges, the screener slipping into space, and you've now created that 4-on-3 that we always talk about on the backside. If you have a great shooter, as an example, this was LeBron James on the Lakers. This is KCP. This is LeBron James. KCP is going to set that pistol or 21 action that we had talked about in a previous episode as LeBron's coming off here. KCP, his man, is going to hedge out, and KCP is going to slip into space. I had to guard this action a lot. Wasn't fun. And KCP may or may not have hit a couple threes on me. The other thing we talk about is driveaways. Love driveaways. This is Dwyane Wade over here. Here's his defender. There is a screener. And as this guy comes to screen, remember Dwyane Wade in the aughts, in the 2000s, early 2010s, sometimes this was still a hedge. So we talk about the idea of dribbling away or rejecting a screen, driving away in order to get away from that second defender. So Dwyane Wade would set it up with a little jab step and he'd get baseline on that left side. Almost impossible to guard. And the last concept, which we're going to do on this side of the board because we need the full court, is just a very simple concept. It's intuitive in the name, the advance pass. This can happen on a make. It can happen on a miss. Nikola Jokic gets a defensive rebound here. This is KCP out. There's defenders back. This is not meant to necessarily lead to a layup or an open shot, but it's just a quick advance pass to KCP, the early shift of the defense. You guys will see this with Indiana a ton off of makes. They will take the ball out. They will advance pass to Tyrese Haliburton. He will then advance pass to Aaron Nesmith, Pascal Siakam. They play with pace, and they use the pass to create pace, the advance pass. This is episode 8 of Mind the Game. Please enjoy. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, and please double tap for me, because I got through this entire thing in 2 takes. Bron, lots of stuff happening in the world of basketball these days. I want to actually start with Bronny.
Yeah.
This past week, he was in Chicago at the Combine. And first of all, I've never met Bronny. But I will say, in all the interviews and clips that I saw, his perspective and his mindset at that age was like really stood out.
Yeah.
It was actually quite remarkable. For you as a dad, and obviously my kids play basketball and they're much younger, but as a dad watching him go through this process, what's it like?
Wow, this is where we're kicking it off with, huh, JJ? We go right to that topic. I love it. I love it. As a parent to be able to be, there to witness a child of yours start to live out a dream of theirs is something Bronny has always talked about. And he's said we asked him plenty of times, like, what is your end goal? And his end goal is to be in the NBA. And to see him almost at that moment, for a parent is something that you could just be in awe of, because I mean that's what you want your kids to be able to live out their dreams, and whatever that is, whatever direction they take, you want them to be able to live out their dreams. And for myself and Savannah to be there and be at the Combine this past week in Chicago, to see him out there with other kids that's trying to live out their dream, it was a pretty remarkable. I don't know what to say. This is exciting. Feeling for our whole family, and I probably know the same feeling for him as well.
He had some quotes where he talked about certain players in the NBA that he felt he could play like.
Yeah.
And I thought it was neat. Because not every 19-year-old kid has that perspective.
Right.
Most of us, we think we're going to be all-star, all-NBA from day one, and that's not necessarily how it works for everybody. Do you talk to him about that? Do you talk to him about who he can be in the NBA?
No.
Or is he figuring this out on his own?
Yeah, I think he's figuring it out. I wanted him to kind of figure it out on his own, where he see himself fit in the NBA, or, where he see, what his comp looks like, to see, him mention guys like Derek White, Drew Holiday, a few other guys, Marcus Smart in our league, Davion Mitchell. These are guys who come in and for a team that's trying to win championships, a team that wants to win every night. These are the players that you have to have on your team, because it doesn't always show up in the box scores, but it always shows up in the winning plays. And, for Bronny to have that perspective on where he stands today, that's great. And I think that's great for any team to be able to have a 19-year-old kid. Like you said, I know that wasn't my goal. My goal was listen, I'm trying to make it to the All-Star game in year one. I want to be, All-Star. I want to be MVP. I want to be this, all of these things. And a lot of us have those aspirations. But, for Bronny to just have that mindset of listen, At this point in time in my life and in my game, I know where I stand, but I know how I affect the game, and he's just a winning player. And I just love his mindset. It's just some of his answers and to a lot of the questions that was given to him was like, I was in awe of, because we've never actually, even talked about it, but he's living in it. He's living in the moment, and he's definitely carving out his own lane. He's definitely not his dad, and I'm not him. I wouldn't be able to handle the scrutiny and all the things that he got going on, at his age and at his level, and with social media. Like, I didn't have social media to deal with when I came in at 18. I did have a lot of scrutiny. I did have a lot of things that was put on my shoulders, but I didn't have, every single day around the clock news coverage, sports shows, things of talking about this particular person every single day. Or you go online or on social media and X and Instagram, and everyone can comment every single day about whatever they want to say, whatever. I didn't have to deal with that. And to see him handle it, with such class and so, just like self-awareness and just staying even keel is just a remarkable thing, man. And super proud of him. Me and Savannah talk about it all the time, how proud of we are of our kids. And, he's the oldest. We always told him from day one, listen, you have to set an example for your brother and your little sister. And he continues to do that.
Yeah, I would say that NBA media got a week's worth of content out of him being
yeah, well, since, I think they said, since your dad's not in the playoffs no more, you know what? We're going to ride your coattail, Bronny James. We can't get your dad to say anything right now. He declined an interview at the Cavs game. We can't get him to say anything, so we're gonna use your son. Yeah, we know how that goes.
There's other things. There's other things happening in the NBA world, non-playoff related, that I feel like the NBA media is using as well.
Absolutely.
I'm glad when you pointed to those guys that Bronny mentioned, you talked about players that impact winning, and I think that's a great segue to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, man.
And the conference finals are set. We've got 4 teams, and there's some similarities between all 4 teams, but I think all 4 teams have their own specific identity. One of the things when I think about all 4 of these teams is they have a bunch of guys that star in their roles beyond the stars of the team.
Yep.
There's buy-in across the board to what guys' roles are. And I think in the regular season, whether it's because people are distracted, the viewership is different. Everybody wants to talk about is who is in the MVP discussion, all of that. It's not till the playoffs that we fully get to appreciate guys like Naz Reid, guys like TJ McConnell, the Derek Whites of the world, PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford. Jaden McDaniels, of course. And it's, to me, this playoff run for like across the league, does it feel like to you the role players are almost having more impact than normal? I mean, I know there's always been there, but it feels like when we talk about, we always talk about like your stars got to win a couple games. You got to gut through a game. Maybe your coach gets you a game. Your role players win you a game. It feels like the role players night to night have just been incredibly consistent.
No, you're absolutely right, JJ. I mean, you look at last night's Game 7 in Denver, we talk about how spectacular Ant-Man has been this whole postseason. Last night, he goes 6 for 24 from the field. I mean, I think at halftime, he had maybe 2 or 4 points, and in that fourth quarter, you saw Naz Reid. You saw, obviously Rudy is kind of a star player, but Rudy making plays, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Jaden McDaniels was just, he's been huge all season, but you see it even more in the postseason. But Naz Reid last night, from, the Euro step he had left, right on Joker, get fouled on the offensive rebound. Then he had a tip dunk from the corner. He had a big time block shot on Joker late in that game as well. Like, he was huge. And then he pushed it in transition. They was up 7 and hit Ant-Man for a corner 3 opposite of their bench. That came off Naz Reid. So like, you're absolutely right. The role players right now with these 4 teams that's left are making all the plays. You saw P.J. Washington. Seemed like every time P.J. Washington got into foul trouble in that Dallas versus OKC series, OKC kind of had a little advantage, you know? And when he was on the floor, the advantage was gone, you know, because P.J. Washington was there, made the timely threes, obviously in game 6 at home, made the timely stops. He was just big for him. So, you know, and obviously T.J. McConnell, he's just he's a coach's dream to be able to have a guy like that comes in, knows exactly what he's doing, push the tempo. He's always going to be high in assist to turnover ratio, you know, and he's just a dog. So you are absolutely right, man. This postseason is great, and as much, obviously we know the narrative is always going to go to the star guys. But to be honest, these games have been won by the MVPs of the role players.
Yeah, to that point, last night's a great example in Game 7. There were games earlier in the Knicks run where Jalen Brunson didn't have a good shooting night and they won. Luka has not been at his best outside of a couple games, and they've won. They won games in that OKC series without Kyrie having a monster performance. And I don't know what I'm trying to get at, but it feels like, and it feels like, and we'll get to some of the parity stuff in a second, but it just feels like the depth of talent right now, particularly on really good teams, like you can't concentrate. You need 7, 8 guys that can really play in high pressure moments and have you called it a dog, I'll say it, the toughness, the mental fortitude to compete at this level. And it feels like across the board in the NBA, we're getting more and more of these guys that are just, they're fucking good players, man. They're good players.
Absolutely right. And they are starring in their roles, and they're not doing nothing outside of what they do. And this is what this postseason has been about, and that's what this top 4 is all about. These top 4 teams, Indiana, Boston, Dallas, and Minnesota, have a bunch of guys who star in their role, and they do it every single night, man. They are great at what they do. And if there's teams out here looking to see how to be successful, obviously you got to have star. You got to have maybe 1, possibly 2. You know, that's gonna make sure that everybody stays even keel. But at the end of the day, you got to have those soldiers around, man. You got to have, the concierges and the capos and the rest of those guys that's going to be ready to go, man. And that's what we see at the Final Four right now in the NBA.
I want to talk about the identity of each team and sort of where you sort of would break down what makes each of these teams great. And so let's actually start in the Eastern Conference. I want to talk about the Boston Celtics and a lot of the talk when the season started. Right, they have 6 starters. They have more talent at the top end than any other team. They had a great regular season. They've certainly faced a little bit of adversity, losing game 2 in both series. But to me, this is a team that has a clear identity. How would you describe it?
I would describe it as they know exactly what they want to get to. They know exactly what their game. Obviously, they shoot a ton of threes, and that goes back to, I don't know if it was episode 1 or 2 from Mind the Game, where we were talking about the 3-point attempts and how many threes you should take. But they play with a lot of space. They're not the most paced team. The team that they're going up against is probably number 1 in pace, but they play with a lot of space, and it's 5 out. It's 5 out, and it's Drew, it's JT, it's Jaylen, it's D White, and it's Horford. And hopefully we would love to see Porzingis back, because, we want to see everybody whole when you get an opportunity to be whole at this point. So, and they surround those guys all game. It's a bunch of threes. They try to get some mismatches and either some flare screens or some rip screens where they can get a smaller guy on Jaylen Brown or Jayson Tatum, and they try to exploit mismatches. But they know exactly what they're trying to get through. Driving kicks, shoot a bunch of threes, try to get some offensive rebounds to kick out for threes again. Early transition threes, early attacks through the 45 for Jaylen Brown, for Derek White, for Tatum, and then the rest of those guys just play off each other. So they definitely have an identity.
Yeah, so you bring up the switches and some of the things they do, and I want to differentiate right now between how the different ways you can manipulate matchups. Because traditionally, if you wanted to get a certain matchup, the guy would let's say it's you would bring the ball up the court and you say, come here. And you do three different pick and rolls until they finally switch, and then you get your matchup and you go, right? I think Boston will do that for sure. And they do that a lot late game. They'll just set a side pick and roll. Get Derek White's guy on Jayson Tatum.
Yep, exactly.
Whatever it may be, but they do a lot of the rip screen stuff.
Yep, from the elbows. In their V2, Horns 2 set. That creates those mismatches. If they can get behind the defense on a slip, now all of a sudden you got Al Horford, Jaylen Brown, whoever in the corner. You got shooting. But what that leads to, and I think in some ways this is where they have a clear identity beyond just shooting and spacing. Because they create those mismatches, whether it's Porzingis, Tatum, Brown, they get to a lot of ISOs. They get to a lot of post-ups. That is not Indiana. At all. At all.
That is not Indiana.
At all.
You bring up the pace, and I just called 4 of their games in the conference semifinals. I think the most impressive thing to me about them is, number one, their use of the advanced pass. But also, they don't really run plays.
Right.
And Rick Carlisle said this to me. He's like, we're a concept team. We're not a play team, right? They will run multiple actions, whether it's pushing the ball up to initiate the offense or an advanced pass to initiate the offense. It's multiple actions, one after another, that eventually leads to drive and kick. We think about them and they're like, they shoot a lot of threes. Here's the thing. They led the league in points in the paint. All of that stuff that they do, the high pick and rolls with Haliburton, the advanced pass, TJ McConnell gnashing on the baseline, all of that is to eventually get something in the paint.
Correct.
And they'll take threes. I'm not saying they won't take threes. They want points in the paint.
Absolutely.
It's a totally different thing.
Totally contrast from their opponent that they about to face. You got one team that wants to shoot a bunch of threes, and yes, they will take their layups and get their dunks or whatever the case may be. The defense break down. But with Indiana, they want to live in the paint. And like you're saying, their ability to, throw the ball up ahead, flatten the defense, to throw it back to either a slip drag or a double drag to get Haliburton going downhill, finding guys, and then they get to their drive and kick game, which they are very efficient and very good at. So it's going to be definitely a game of two contrasts, different teams, but it's going to be fun to watch.
What do you think is the best way to describe why the advanced pass is so important?
I think the best way to describe why the advanced pass is so important, I just said it. It literally flattens the defense out, and what that means, when you're throwing the ball ahead, the defense is always trying to get back to the level of the ball, get below the ball. And with Indiana, I think that is a point of emphasis for them to try to get all the bodies below the ball, so when they throw it back, you're not in a position to now cover the pick and roll, which now they're very dynamic at, and, you tell your bigs, get back, guards, get back, so when they kicking the ball ahead, if they don't have early layups or they have early driving kicks, once that ball gets kicked back to TJ McConnell or to Tyrese Haliburton, now here comes the drags. And it's not like, dribble, wait. No, they're right there at the point of the throwback. It's either a slip drag with Miles Turner, it's either a slip drag with Obi Toppin, or it's going to be a nice screen by Jackson, the guy off the bench, their backup center. He's really good at it. Or now their guards are getting involved where they're hip tapping and, and slipping out. So, I think that's very, I think as a coach and as a coaching staff, they were able to identify their personnel and they knew exactly what would work for them. And that's a great coach and a great coaching staff right there, to be able to identify your personnel, because they don't have many. At the end of the day, we say, why they're not posting up or why they're not ISOing. To be honest, Indiana, they don't have the personnel to do that. And
Siakam's really the only guy, and that is, and I think to a degree, they only do that really when they feel like he has a mismatch, and they felt like in that Knicks series he had a mismatch against Josh Hart, and games 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He took advantage of that.
Yeah, he did.
The advanced pass certainly flattens the defense. It's to me what you're describing is like an early shift.
Yep, early shift. Yep.
Where if you advance pass it up the right wing, now all of a sudden everybody who's retreating on defense is shifting towards that side. Versus if you just bring the ball up or you walk the ball up, everybody's set. There's no shift.
Yep, there's no shift. Yep.
The other thing, and there was a great article recently about how the league is a copycat league and how a lot of these coaches are stealing stuff from each other. We all know that. But one of the things it talked about was a lot of coaches want the ball to get across half court in 2 to 3 seconds. And one of the things that has happened in this playoffs in particular is the pickup points has been all the way in the backcourt.
Yes.
There was a stat I mentioned on a broadcast. There have been more possessions with backcourt pressure on average in a playoff game than in any other playoff season since we started to have track and error. So all that advanced pass does is it takes the pressure off, right?
Yep.
You can create a mismatch as teams are retreating rather than walk the ball up, rather than dribble the ball up. That advanced pass, maybe you get a mismatch. Maybe it's Jokic throwing ahead to Gordon. Now Gordon has a smaller guy on him and he can post and you can create offense that way, whatever it may be. So I think the advanced pass is super, super important. Boston uses it as well. And in particular, Jaylen Brown in transition, looking to attack off the advanced pass is massive.
And I believe I think Jaylen Brown was number 1 in fast break points this year too. I believe.
Where were you? You were top 6, top 5?
Maybe it was 2, maybe.
The other thing I want to talk about as it relates to this series is there's a bunch of different ways to guard pick and rolls, right? You can be in drop coverage. You can switch. You can be up to touch, which I feel like for a lot of my career, certainly a lot of your career, people were up to touch. Now a lot of teams play heavy drop coverage. You can also hedge. You can show. And bigs used to do this, which is hilarious looking back. But if you're target hunting, like let's say Jalen Brunson was on Tyrese Haliburton in that Knicks Pacers series, and I would expect Joe Mazzulla to do the same in this series, Tyrese Haliburton, rather than switching, would be in a hedge. What do you think is a way you can sort of exploit that hedge, and why do you think teams have gone away from it?
Why do I think teams have went away from the hedge? Because so much slipping goes on in our league as well. I think teams started exploiting the hedge. So they started running clear side pick and rolls. So if I know you're in a hedge, and 9 times out of 10, if you have one of your defenders, you usually try to put him on a guy that's not much of a playmaker, but he's probably a good ass shooter. So your only job is to kind of chase him. Don't give him no airspace, whatever the case may be. So a lot of teams have exploited that by putting their shooters as a screener, but not having them, if you know the guy that's guarding him is going to be in a hedge, you go a clear side pick and roll and you just have him slip out. He's never going to be able to get there. He's never going to be able to get back. And 9 times out of 10, that low man in the rotation won't be able to get to that. He won't be able to get to that rotation if you're full rotating. It's too far of a run. So, I think a lot of teams have gone away from the hedge. I actually like it. I actually like it sometimes, depending on who the ball handler is, depending on how good of a passer he is. If it's a guy that wants to be dynamic and always wants to get downhill or exploit, mismatches or switching, and really doesn't want to pass out of the double team, I've always loved a nice hard hedge. Let the guy that's guarding the ball get underneath you and you get back high hands if you're guarding the shooter. And close the gap, turn right back around, because a lot of guys that's holding the ball will then drive up your back if you're closing out with your back towards the ball. But
right.
I think Joe Mazzulla is going to definitely look at some of the things that Tibbs and his coaching staff was doing in that second round matchup versus the Pacers and use it to. We'll see if it goes to their advantage, but they're going to use it.
Yeah, they'll use it, and I think the easiest thing they can do, which the Knicks didn't do a lot of. We were talking earlier about that V2 action, the Horns 2 action, where they set the rip screen and then they slip it. They screen it at an angle so they can get behind the defense and you get the pass. It's the same thing, if you're setting a high ball screen, rather than hold the screen or rather than slip to the 3-point line, you slip into that short roll area. Now you've created a 4-on-3.
Now you create 4-on-3, which is
then you got to have the right players to do that with.
Correct.
For sure.
Correct.
And I think Boston does.
Yeah,
I think Boston
does.
Would I want Derek White slipping into that? Would I want Drew Holiday? Right. Yes, I would.
Yes,
I would.
Obviously, the biggest difference between the Knicks and the Celtics is that, for the majority of the time, you look at the Knicks, Jalen Brunson is the primary ball handler and secondary ball handler 95% of the time. Dante handles a little bit as well. Deuce McBride comes out and handles a little bit. Josh Hart in transition. But from a half-court standpoint, the ball is in Jalen Brunson's hand 97% of the time. Boston, they have 4 guys in their starting lineup who can handle the ball and initiate offense. Drew, Derek, Jaylen, and Jayson. So you can't just hide. You can't hide and you can't point switch and things of that nature because they have multiple guys that can get them into the offense and also make plays off either you fucked up a switch or a closeout game. And that is the last thing you want to be against Boston is in a closeout game because their ability to spray and they're going to be at that 3-point line, 45 threes at least. 45 threes. And you don't want to be in that, especially in Boston. Well, actually, in Boston, they don't play as well at home. You don't want to. It's weird. They don't play as well at home, but still, you don't want to be in those situations with Boston.
One of the things I wanted to talk to you about last episode, it just never kind of came up. But as we're talking about pick and roll coverages, and we're talking about a hedge, let's say, or we're talking about a blitz, which is a double team.
Yep.
What happens in those situations? There's a second defender, right? And so the space that the offensive player, the ball handler, is going towards in a drop, let's say, there's not that space there because the second defender is up, whether he's trying to reroute the ball or he's in a blitz. And I think it brings up the importance of great ball handlers who can drive away. And you played with the person who I consider to be the best at driving away, and that was D-Wade.
Yep.
D-Wade, but by the way, the thing with D-Wade is you weren't up on him either.
Right.
If I'm guarding D-Wade on the left wing, I know, and there's a middle screen coming.
Yep.
I know he's not going to shoot.
Yep.
So I'm automatically a little bit off his body. Right, I know he's trying to drive away. I know I'm going underneath the screen and meet him on the other side. I know all of these things.
And he still does
and
it.
Yet, he sets me up and gets me every time. I still can't figure out how he was so effective at it. I don't know if it was just the way he moved the ball when he jabbed with his right foot, but on that left side, it was impossible.
Yeah, it was impossible. Yeah, he was damn good with that. He was damn good. That's what makes Jalen Brunson so damn effective, too. And Jalen Brunson, you have to respect him a little bit more at the 3-point line. But his ability to reject screens and go away from the screen is challenging, especially when you're bringing, like you said, 2 guys up. It's a screen coming. You said, Biggs, be up. The guard can't let you reject, and they still find a way. And that's, Kyrie does that. Luka has that ability. Tatum, Brown has that ability. So, Ant-Man has that ability. So it's gonna be some chess playing in these conference finals for sure.
Yeah, I think about all those guys that you mentioned potentially facing hard hedges or blitzes, and in some ways, all of them have the ability and have the sort of cooperation to make the right play. And by that, I mean, I've got 2 on the ball. I've done my job. But at the same time, they know their values as primary scorers. And so there's a little bit of a chess game, even with their own mindset about when is the right time to just get off the ball, when is the right time to attack and try to get that drive away. By the way, I think D Wade's dunk on Perk, if I'm not mistaken.
It was a reject for sure. Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was on a reject.
Yeah, it was on a reject.
It was on a reject.
It was on a reject.
Minnesota and Dallas. The commonality to me, and it's a little different, I think, with both these teams in terms of how they're built, but the commonality in terms of identity with these teams right now is with their defense.
Yeah.
And Minnesota, number one defense in the league all season. Dallas, number one defense the last 20 games of the season. They both have size and length. They both have a player in their starting lineup that is a little bit undersized relative to everybody else, Mike Conley, Kyrie Irving.
Yep.
Both those guys have been super engaged throughout the season defensively. So I think both these teams, their identity is built. I think the fascinating part about Minnesota in sort of, watching this, and Jokic said this last night after the thing, he said, yeah, they're a team that's literally built to beat us. And Tim Conley, who was in Denver,
built that team,
goes to Minnesota and built them.
He built them to beat the team that he put together.
It's interesting to think about specifically with them, the sort of what makes them different is their size.
Yeah.
Right? They're just a bigger team. And everybody, we've lived through this three-point revolution. We've lived through this small ball era. You played against them this year. Like, what are some of the ways you can attack them? And what are some of the things that they just do really well?
Minnesota, that is.
Yes.
Minnesota is one of the few teams, if not the only team in our league, that makes the court seem smaller because of their length. When you got Gobert, Cat, Ant, Jayson, and Conley, even though he's not as tall as far as height, if you look at his arms, when he spread his arms out, his wingspan, shuts down a lot of the court as well. So, they cut down the court. They have, Kyle Anderson, super length, Naz Reid, and Nickeil Alexander. Those guys they have a lot of length, and, they just, you're driving, whatever the case may be, the court feels shrunk, so, the best thing you could do is not hold the ball. Because when you hold the ball, they spread arms, they lock arms, they just cut down half of the court. So, you have to, play very just like quick movements, quick drives, quick kicks, and it's not much like I used before. I don't know if that was episode 1 or 2, and I said not much fat time, not much fuck around time when it comes to Minnesota's defense, because they can put you in a box for sure.
Yeah, and then you add in the fact that they can match up positionally if they want.
Yeah.
They can cross match if they want and use Gobert as a roamer and have him just sort of clean up different stuff. It's going to be interesting to see, just how Dallas involves Gobert, whether that's in pick and roll, whether that's sort of off ball if he is cross matched for whatever reason. Do they try to play a little small at times? Like, I could imagine potentially a non-lively Gafford lineup, right? With one of them out.
Yeah.
Rick used to do that all the time when we would play against the Jazz.
And what's a big hurt for Dallas in this series is no Maxi Kleber. Because he having him at the 5, would alleviate, a lot of what Minnesota is trying to do with his ability to guard bigger guys and also hit the 3. So, it's going to be challenging to see if Dallas, if J.K. and his coaching staff kind of goes to a smaller lineup to kind of get Gobert, to try to get Naz Reid and those guys out on the perimeter. But who is the 5 guys? You go Luka, Kyrie, Derrick Jones, P.J. Washington, and Tim Hardaway. He's kind of been not in and out of the rhythm because he didn't play late.
Josh
Green, so Dante Exum is kind of
feisty.
Josh Green is feisty.
Josh Green is feisty,
but they will definitely put Rudy on Josh Green for sure. They will put him on Josh Green and see if he can make a couple shots. But we'll see. It'll be definitely a game of chess for sure when it gets down to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Dallas, of course, I mentioned the defense. They are unique because they have 2 insanely great shot creators, both for themselves and for other people. PJ Washington and Derrick Jones Jr. have been phenomenal in this
phenomenal,
playoff run. Phenomenal. And I think one of the big things in this series, and it goes back to 2 on the ball, right? Is can Minnesota stay out of that? Where I think at times the Clippers and OKC got in trouble. And you got to give credit to Dallas, of course, for actually making the shots.
Mm-hmm.
But where they got in trouble at times was putting 2 on the ball against Kyrie and it wasn't even necessarily blitzes though, Bron. You know what I mean? It was that overhelp or is that, hey, that slot drive from Luka, we're going to put 3 bodies in the vicinity. Well, Luka can make any pass. He can make any pass. And if PJ Washington's shooting 47% from 3, you're in trouble. Right? You're in trouble if you're overhelping. So I think as much as Minnesota can stay out of 2 on the ball, the more success they will have in this series. Bro, I want to finish up with something because we want to talk about sort of all things basketball. And Caitlyn Clark, phenomenal run. I saw her the other night, by the way. I saw her the other night in Indy after I think it was her second game or third game. But it was the first game against Liberty. They played Liberty Thursday, then they were back here in New York on Saturday. I saw her after the Thursday game very briefly. And, she was just talking about the quick turnaround, which I find to be insane, that they go through this season that starts basically in September. They have all their preseason practices, games. She does the tournament, gets the national championship game. And then, within a month, she's playing in real WNBA games. There's no real off season for her. But the thing I wanted to bring up was just, I don't want to call it hatred, but there's definitely like a dislike or vitriol coming her way towards older players. And look, I think we all experienced that to some degree when we first got in the NBA.
For sure.
Your opponents are not wrapping their arms around you. I had that to a small extent. I was the cocky white kid from Duke, right? I feel like sometimes my teammates hated me. How did you process that? How did you go through that at a young age, coming into the NBA, where the people could have been your teammates, could have been the people you were competing against. They weren't celebrating you.
No, not at all.
They wanted to kick your ass.
Absolutely. I mean, my teammates for sure. There's video evidence of my teammates basically saying he's not ready, or there's somebody playing his position, or we're not putting all our faith in the 18-year-old kid, or, all this hype, we've been here, all this, So my own teammates that I had to be on the floor with, practicing with, on the planes with, in the locker room, in game situations was kind of, just had this kind of, like you said, you don't say hate, but just animosity, towards me and what I could provide. And I didn't even come in with that. I came in with the narrative, but I didn't come in with that type of aura. I just wanted to come in and learn from the vets and then put the work in. So I think for my advice to Caitlyn, and my advice to anyone that comes in with this, this level of notoriety, out of this world expectation, whatever the case may be, I just think it's all about having, be a horse, man. The Kentucky Derby, put your blinders on, go to work, show up to work, punch your clock in, prepare yourself, work on your game, work on your craft, kind of keep your mouth shut, and just learn from the vets. When they ask, you voice your opinion if they want your opinion, man, early on, because everybody is looking for you to say anything, and they're going to splice it and cut it and make it a negative thing. And I think for her, the one thing that I love that she's bringing to her sport, more people want to watch. More people want to tune in. I saw for the first time that they had a chartered plane for the first time in their league history. They flew private. That should be celebrated in its own right. For anyone that's, in sports that's flown commercial or flown, charter, that should be celebrated. And it's because of Caitlyn Clark. Don't get it twisted. Don't get it fucked up. Caitlyn Clark is the reason why a lot of great things is going to happen for the WNBA. But for her individually, I don't think she should get involved on nothing that's being said. Just go have fun, enjoy. People need to realize the Indiana Fever, this is the second year in a row they had the number 1 pick. So do y'all know what that means? That means they're not that good. They had back-to-back years as the number 1 pick.
Why are you a hater on the Fever, man?
No, I am a realist. Because not only I get people are just crazy about why she should be doing this and they should be doing that. If she's so great, this team, it's still a team game, people. It is still a team game, and but I'm rooting for Caitlyn because I've been in that seat before. I've walked that road before. I hope she kills. I hope Aaliyah Boston does amazing. I hope they do great. I'm just kind of in this mode right now because I'm getting the same, thing from watching my son, who's a 19-year-old, kind of getting a lot of animosity and hatred towards him when he's just a kid trying to live out his dream. There's a very small number of men and women that actually get to live out their dream of playing a professional sport. And we have grown-ass men and women out here doing whatever they can to try to make sure that does not happen. That is the weirdest thing in the world, but it is what it is. And I'm glad that Caitlyn has a great head on her shoulder. She seems like it. I don't think I've ever met her. I don't think I've met her before, but it seems like everything is going to be great for her because she's a great talent. She seems like a great gal. And I hope she turns that franchise around to where, Tamika Catchings had it at one point.
A couple things to finish up here. I just wanted, you brought up the thing with your teammates, and I found this quote. I don't know why I did this, but it was a while ago. It was for the Old Man and Three. I can't remember who we were interviewing, but I found a quote by Paul Silas where Paul, who was your head coach, was talking about how your teammates hated you. So I thought that was interesting. And the other thing I was going to say is right after, your summer league was in Boston, right?
I played in Boston and Orlando, yep.
Okay, you played Boston and Orlando. So it was after Boston.
Mm-hmm.
I saw one of your teammates. I'm not going to name names here. So one of your teammates, and he wasn't negative. He wasn't negative. But this has been in my brain for the last 20 years. He said, I said, yo, how was LeBron? What do you think of him? And he said, yeah, man, he can really pass, really knows the game. He's he's going to make other guys better. But I think he's going to struggle to score. I don't think he's going to score. Meanwhile, 40,000 points later. Great take.
That was a great take. He was spot on.
Great take. All right. Talk to you soon, man.
Man, always good to see you, man. All right.
Ron, I love the term fat time.
Yeah.
I'm going to start using it.
No fuck around time. No.
I love that.
None of it.
I love that.
All right, Jay.
Hey, guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching Mind the Game podcast. If you like it, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you.